Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host and most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of the story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host and most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
All right, today's date, January 16th, 2021, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most Will Buchanan on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, this is a semi-family friendly podcast, which means that we will try to curb our language. However, warn our viewer heads up that some of the things we may show may be a little on the graphic side, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So we've we've had a tumultuous week as we get closer to how can we say Donald's final day. Doritos' final days are coming up, and well, let's be honest, Washington's starting to look like a military base in the sandbox.
Another week together, and with just 5 days now until the inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden. Tonight, the nation's capital is a fortress. The FBI concerned about any plans for a potential second act from rioters who stormed the Capitol. Tonight, the FBI now warning of the potential for improvised explosive devices, IEDs, and about threats to lawmakers and political leaders. And this evening here, the images from the Capitol surrounded by fencing now, razor wire, and thousands of National Guard troops. 25,000 troops will be there for the inauguration. And it comes as we are learning just how close the rioters chanting "Hang Pence" came to the vice president as he was being whisked away during the siege. Reportedly just about 100 feet away. Rioters were led away from Pence by Officer Eugene Goodman. One of the first people who breached the Senate chamber, Jacob Chansley, he was in court today, and authorities on the ominous note prosecutors say Chansley left on the vice president's desk in that chamber. Also under arrest tonight, the man seen in this horrific scene, allegedly beating down an officer with an American flag on a pole, and we are hearing from some of the officers tonight who were under attack, including Officer Daniel Hodges, screaming for help as he was crushed in that doorway by the mob. Tonight, we're also learning about that phone call now between the Vice President Mike Pence and the Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. And news tonight here on President Trump, who is now planning a military-style farewell for himself on the morning of the inauguration. So we're going to begin here this Friday night with ABC's Martha Raddatz leading us off.
Tonight, the nation's capital braced for violence. Checkpoints and barricades throughout the city. Armed National Guard patrolling Capitol Hill. And with just 4 days before Joe Biden is sworn in, unprecedented shutdowns.
As of this morning, the Secretary of the Interior has officially closed the areas in the National Mall.
And an inaugural rehearsal planned by the Biden team for Sunday has been postponed, according to sources. Among the FBI's top concerns for Inauguration Day, the substantial threat of improvised explosive devices and the ongoing threat to members of Congress and political leaders. And tonight, we are learning just how close the rioters who stormed the Capitol last Wednesday got to Vice President Pence. The Washington Post reporting Pence was rushed from the Senate chamber 1 minute before this group reached the second floor, only led away by Officer Eugene Goodman, who acted as a decoy. That scene playing out while Pence, his wife, and daughter were just 100 feet away. After he was rushed to safety, one of the first people to reach Pence's desk, Jacob Chansley, the so-called QAnon shaman. Prosecutors arguing he should remain in custody after leaving a note on Pence's desk that read, "It's only a matter of time. Justice is coming." Prosecutors also citing images they say are of retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Larry Brock with those zip ties as evidence of plans to take hostages. Brock and Chansley both served in the military. And Jacob Fracker, one of the two Rocky Mount, Virginia policemen arrested, is also a corporal in the Virginia National Guard, off duty at the time. Jenna Ryan was arrested today. The Texas real estate agent took a private jet to Washington and called it one of the best days of her life. And tonight, chilling firsthand accounts from some of the heroic police officers fighting off the mob last week. 32-year-old Daniel Hodges crushed against a door, not certain he would survive.
At this point, my arms were pinned, so I couldn't really defend myself. Once he got my mask off, he also was able to rip away my riot baton from me and started beating me in the head with it.
And Officer Michael Fanone, grabbed by the mob, tased and beaten.
People started chanting, kill him with his own gun. And at that point, self-preservation kicked in. I remember thinking, I could kill some of these guys, but that would give them the justification that they were looking for, I think, to kill me.
The father of four pleading for his life, talking today with our Pierre Thomas.
I remember yelling out, not to anybody in specific, but, I have kids, and it seemed to work.
But he suffered a mild heart attack and spent 2 days in the hospital. But it could have been so much worse. And tonight, that sobering sight in the district, those armed National Guard on the Hill, 25,000 expected by next week. Inside the security perimeter today, we spoke to members of the Guard preparing for the worst.
I was here that day. There were veterans in the crowd.
It weighed on my heart heavy to feel that brothers and sisters that served before me, that paved the way for us serving today, were taking part in such an act. Hopefully they can answer for their actions.
So let's get to Martha Raddatz with us live tonight. And Martha, it was last night here we reported on the Vice President Mike Pence, that unscheduled stop up there at the Capitol to thank members of the National Guard like the members you spoke with today. And this evening, we're now learning more about a phone call last night between the Vice President Mike Pence and the Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. He called to congratulate her.
Exactly, David. Vice President Pence did call Kamala Harris to congratulate her and visit the National Guard in this fortress of a city. Donald Trump has stayed far away from the Hill, and of course, he hasn't called Joe Biden because he still refuses to concede. David?
Oh, well, so a lot. Like I said before, a lot this week has happened. Of course, a lot of people now, I'd say their eyes have been opened. Let's not forget the attempted coup from the white terrorists. I'm not going to call them rioters. I am not going to call them patriots. Let's call them what they are, terrorists, who did try to take a coup on the U.S. Capitol during the counting of the electoral college votes for the President-elect Joe Biden and VP Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. They tried to stop the count. Really, they did. And again, and I point this out, that a lot of people, most importantly, the Capitol Police Chief, did not take these terrorists seriously. And that's how they got in. And shout out to Eugene Goodman, because I'm hoping, this wasn't reported in any story yet, but Eugene Goodman, the black man that was leading them away and playing as a decoy, because I initially thought this was the same guy in my previous post. I'm like, why isn't dude pulling the gun? I said, you have a gun, your life is threatened. I wouldn't be mad at you if you fired. But did not know, and of course I had to go back and apologize. I did not know what he was doing. Again, it was brilliant what he did. He sat there and led them away from the Senate chamber, and the group actually was diverted to where he actually saved lives. And again, I hope this man, I hope Officer Goodman, gets now that's a medal of honor. In my case, that's a medal of honor you give out in that situation, that you literally sacrifice your life in that way. I can't be mad about that. And like I said before, I hope he gets it. He should get it. He deserves it, along with the officers there that worked with him to divert that entire crowd. But again, it's crazy that how underestimated these people were. These terrorists were. These white terrorists were. Even to the point now, because, again, I wanted to show D.C. as it was, which right now looks like a military fortress in a different country. I mean, they got walls, barricades, armed National Guard. And the only thing I'm thinking about all this is, where was this when the Capitol actually needed it? Oh, right, because they were white. Call me if I'm wrong on that. Even more so that, again, you saw pictures, right? You saw pictures of them with zip ties, some of them were armed, and again, initially, the Department of Justice was going to go after them the same way it's going to go after terrorists. It was going to, they initially sat there and said that the white terrorists wanted to go in and capture and assassinate officials. Yeah, they walked that back. Because again, the Justice Department has formally walked back their assertion in a court filing that said Capitol rioters sought to capture and assassinate elected officials. I'm trying to figure that part out personally. Because how in the world do you walk back what you said? Is that, well, they wanted to capture and assassinate elected officials. Okay, we saw that. You saw the pictures of guys with zip ties. You saw one guy, and I mean, they had a noose. They had a hanging noose on the D.C. Capitol lawn. Yeah, they had every intention in the world. They had every intention in the world of capturing and assassinating, even with the death threats that Nancy Pelosi, Ilhan Omar, and a handful of other people, even Mitt Romney. There was conservatives that had death threats put upon them too, because they didn't support their dictator would-be in chief Trump. So Democrats and conservatives alike had death threats, and these people really did get to them. So again, I find it completely amazing that as they investigate this, and I have to give credit where credit's due, because Representative James Clyburn said it best about the entire failed coup. It was way too easy and way too quickly for those people to get to where they got to, unless it was an inside job. And of course, I reported last week. I reported last week that the D.C. Capitol Police Chief did resign. Of course, his second in command did resign because, again, I explained it last week. But the simple fact of the matter is, any time the Capitol Police Chief could have requested National Guard assistance. They actually reached out to him twice, and he denied. He said, "No, we don't need it." So, and it wasn't even him that requested the National Guard at the time of the coup was just really jumping off. It was actually Pence himself. So again, it sounds like an inside job, and you gotta understand, Trump supporters are everywhere. It's a cult. It is like watching a cult infiltrate all areas of government, and at the same time, there's always one somewhere. Even more so when they sit there and say, well, they're not violent. Really? Trump supporters aren't violent? I present to you Exhibit A.
And is accused of shooting and injuring a 15-year-old girl who is black during a confrontation at a President Trump rally in Des Moines last month. Michael McKinney is charged with attempted murder in the December 6th shooting. McKinney, who was heavily armed and wearing body armor, told police he fired in self-defense. He has posted on Facebook in support of the far-right Proud Boys and against Black Lives Matter. Authorities say the incident was traffic-related. The victim's mother says the crowd of Trump supporters subjected her daughter and the other girls to racist abuse.
Okay, so again, I point this out. I point this out for the simple fact of the matter when they say, well, all Trump fans are not violent. Really? Here's my thing. When you come to a Trump rally, heavily armed and body armored, you're not going there to cosplay. You're not going there to play pretend army. You're going there with the intention of wanting to hurt someone. You are going there with the intention of wanting to kill. You are going there with the intention of doing really anything, and then you're going to use the excuse, well, I'm defending myself. I'm sorry, I've never understood. If you go to a rally heavily armored, you're not going to a rally to protest. You're going to a rally to start some shit. And even so, he shot and wounded a 15-year-old black girl. You are heavily wounded, and yet a 15-year-old black girl threatens you? Where have we heard this story before? And again, it's not surprising because again, he does the key words. I was in fear for my life. Really? Capitol Police was in fear for their life. And again, if you've heard the stories, they all say the same thing. I feared for my life. I didn't know I was going to make it home. So why didn't you shoot? Which is again the question I don't see. I mean, I don't see anybody really asking that question. But again, I would ask, if your life was such in danger, why didn't you shoot? I can understand Mr. Goodman. Mr. Goodman was trying to not shoot because now that more of the story has come out, and again, I apologize for my way of thinking on that, but he was doing a favor as far as leading people away. Versus if you're out in the crowd and they're trying to bum rush you, and you hear talking about kill him with his own gun and all this stuff. And again, as an officer, they are thinking, and I can't knock them for thinking because that's what we wanted officers to. We wanted law enforcement to do that. We wanted them to think before they pull. I cannot be mad about that. At the same time, I just wonder what the situation would be like, and I already know what the situation would be like. Because again, I've said that on my previous podcast as well. You swap out the white terrorists with Black Lives Matter. Oh, they would still be pressure washing the blood off the steps of the Capitol today. Because I'm not gonna say it's hypocrisy, but the way, every black person knows, because we all had the collective thought, if they had been black, this would have been a completely different story. But again, the inauguration is this week. Biden and Kamala Harris. I just can't wait to say Madam. On a side note, I cannot wait to just say Madam VP, Madam Vice President Harris. Now, again, Harris wasn't my first choice for vice president, but it should be historically simply fact because representation matters. The fact that we will see a black woman as a vice president for these United States, representation always matters, and I can't knock it for that. But at the same time, let's look at the fact that Trump, I'm sorry, I'm going to be literal. I hope Trump gets pulled out of the White House kicking and screaming. I hope he does. Because, again, they took Mike Pence. Mike Pence could have said congratulations to Kamala Harris anytime last year. Why did he choose this week to finally do it? I don't know. However, we don't expect Donald to really do anything, Dorito. Because, Dorito, for the 4 years, you've made our lives a living hell. And at the same time, I don't even think Biden expects you to show up, which Donald Trump said he would not show up to the inauguration. So when the question was posed to Joe Biden, his response was very similar to everybody.
Threat that he poses. My question to you is not so much about the role that Congress should play in impeachment, but rather, should President Trump, in your estimation, remain in office?
I didn't think, look, I've been saying for now well over a year, he is not fit to serve. He is not fit to serve. He's one of the most incompetent presidents in the history of the United States of America. And so the idea that I think he shouldn't be out of office yesterday is not the issue. The question is, what happens with 14 days left to go or 13 days left to go? And I think that what 81 million people stood up and said, it's time for him to go. And the United States Senate voted 93-6 to confirm that we should be sworn in. We were duly elected. So I think it's important we get on with the business of getting him out of office. The quickest way that will happen is us being sworn in on the 20th. What action happens before or after that is a judgment for the Congress to make, but that's what I am looking forward to. Him leaving office. I was told that on the way up here, way over here, that he indicated he wasn't going to show up at the inauguration. One of the few things he and I have ever agreed on. It's a good thing I'm not showing up.
Earlier, you'd said that if you'd hoped that he would show up only in the sense that it was valuable to send a signal to the world about the transfer of power. You've clearly changed your perspective on that.
Because he has clearly demonstrated, he's exceeded even my worst notions about him. He's been an embarrassment to the country, embarrassed us around the world, not worthy to hold that office. If we were 6 months out, we should be moving everything to get him out of office, impeaching him again, trying to invoke the 25th Amendment, whatever it took to get him out of office. But I am focused now on us taking control as president and vice president on the 20th, and to get our agenda moving as quickly as we can.
With respect to what you just said about the inauguration and that it's a good thing that the president is not coming, but what about the vice president, Mike Pence?
He's welcome. I think it's important that as much as we can stick to what have been the historical precedents of how and the circumstances in which an administration changes should be maintained. And so if the vice president is welcome to come, we'd be honored to have him there and to move forward in the transition.
Have you spoken to him at all?
No, I haven't.
And you have called for unity and healing in this country, but after the events of Wednesday, does that make your job easier or harder?
I think it makes my job easier, quite frankly. I've had a number of my Republican colleagues, former colleagues, I used to serve in the Senate for a long time, call me. Many of them are as outraged and disappointed and embarrassed and mortified by the president's conduct as I am and Democrats are. And I think I have said from the beginning, and I have not changed my view, my overarching objective is to unify this country. We must unify the country. And I think that you've heard me say this before, and I apologize for repeating myself, but understandably the questions are repetitive and good. I mean, I'm not being critical of the question. And that is that there's two ways people are inspired: by inspirational leaders and by terrible leaders. By terrible leaders. What this president has done is rip the Band-Aid all the way off to let the country know who he is.
Well, you're not wrong about that. But I do like the fact that Biden did simply sit there and say, well, it's kind of, I should say now it's easier for Biden to say that because now you're president-elect. Yeah, he's an idiot. He's never, and again, idiots did vote him in. And the news, and like I said before, it is coming down to this week. He will be sworn in. Unfortunately, there will not be a crowd, as there usually is a crowd at the inauguration days, just because of the growing threat that Trump's cult of domestic terrorists have sat there and said the next time we come to the Capitol, it will be armed. So again, they have decided on very no crowds. It probably will just be press only for the inauguration. And at the same time, never in our history of our country did we have to have so much security outside of President Obama to where we have to be very careful about the next president. But again, he's right about a lot of things, which I will go into momentarily as we talk about his plan. But Donald, you're just not having a wonderful week, and it's well deserved. The white identity extremists, let's just call them terrorists. That's what they are. I'm sorry. Hey, Nunu, thank you for commenting, but I'm just going to call them what they are. They are not just extremists; they're terrorists. They are literally the one. They are literally the one thing that in this country the two words will never be put together in any case or any frame. They are white terrorists. Extremists, yes, but they are terrorists. The moment you decide to go against the country just because you may not like the rules and regulations and decide, screw that, I'm going to fight for what I want to and endanger lives, you are now a terrorist. Let's call it what it is. But moving right along, guys. As far as Donald's concerned, he's not having a good week because now the House has impeached Donald Trump for the second time, and it's now with the Senate. Now I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. With a week to go before the actual inauguration of Biden and Harris, will the Senate move forward on this? Now keep in mind, the Senate for the next couple of days is still under Mitch McConnell's control. Even though they did impeach him to where they sent it off to the Senate, Nancy Pelosi did actually send the articles of impeachment to the Senate as of Friday yesterday. Now it just depends on Senate Majority Leader, because it's interesting that he sat there and said that the trial would begin on Tuesday. Now keep in mind, on Tuesday, the inauguration, which the Tuesday is the 19th, the inauguration's on the 20th. So I know a lot of you guys are sitting there thinking, well, how is this going to be possible to go ahead and go with the trial of impeachment a day before Biden is sworn in? Well, it is very possible. The reason why it's possible is because impeachment trials will happen regardless if the president is in office or not. The reason why this impeachment is important, and I say it's important because, like I said before, this is a day after, because with the senators getting sworn in, a day after Biden is being sworn in, just because it's been special elections and all that. But once they're sworn in, a day after, which I believe is the, which I believe is either Thursday or Friday, if memory serves me right. But after Thursday and Friday, Senator Mitch McConnell is no longer the Senate Majority Leader. That actually goes to Chuck Schumer. But in the middle of it all, yes, they will still have a trial because, again, Mitch McConnell himself would be a hypocrite considering that he railroaded 2 Supreme Court judges' picks. Trump's tax plan, which was irrecoverably terrible for it was irrecoverably terrible for our economy, but made rich people more rich. So we're not really surprised about that because it's conservative. But again, the fact that he's sitting there saying, well, we shouldn't try to move this forward, but yet you move 2 Supreme Court picks forward within a week of each other. One that was directly after the untimely passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And you now decide that, okay, well, maybe we need to be careful about Donald Trump being impeached and how we should go about it. Now, I know a lot of people are asking, well, what does this mean about him being impeached? He's going to be gone in a few days. Here's why. Because if the president is impeached, that means that, number one, they lose their pension. Number 2, they lose their security service detail. Number 3, they can no longer run for president. That's the key part. The third part is the key part. Because keep in mind, Donald Trump did lose. Yes. Could he come back and run again? Currently, yes. However, if he is impeached, he can no longer run. And I think that right there is the key goal. If he is impeached, he can no longer run for office. But if he's not, then yes, we could probably see a resurgence somewhere between here and 2024. We could. I'm not surprised if we do. If this impeachment doesn't go through, that Donald Trump wouldn't try again in 2024 to turn around and run. However, it's going to be a little bit hard for him to run, considering that every social media platform has blocked him. And again, that is still funny. It's like, but again, I say to Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, look, I'm glad that y'all all decided now ban Donald Trump indefinitely, but you are still 4 years too late. Again, Twitter was his way of Trump talking to the American people, and that was already itself as messed up. They're using social media. He didn't do official press conferences that much. Lord knows he's went through what? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, he's went through 3 press secretaries. The last one just left. And I mean, it how do you get to this point? Really, and even more so as I'm going through this. Not only is he impeached, not only will he be gone by Wednesday, and he's losing all of his contracts, especially with New York City, the city that he said he loved but hated and moved to Florida, and now they're canceling all their contracts with the Trump organization. So again, this does not look good. This does not look good for. Now, if I could talk, that'd be great. This does not look good for Donald Trump as it stands. Just because he is literally and figuratively losing, he's already lost the presidency. which means that all those attorney generals that have been sitting on indictments, they are about to come after him. Deutsche Bank and other banks that owe him money are calling in loans. And at the same time, you're under prosecution from so many different areas. I'm just like, this is like watching, you know what I've always noticed? It's like watching one of those crime family movies where in the end, they only get the bad guy in court. It's kind of like watching The Godfather Part 3 almost near the end. It's really what it is. We finally get to see the end. We finally get to see the end of Donald Trump, or so we think. But we'll keep touches on that. So, like I said, Biden himself, he did unveil a plan on Thursday evening as he gave his afternoon address, and let's talk about it.
Biden, he's laid out his new massive $1.9 trillion COVID relief plan. It includes money for testing, vaccines, opening schools, and direct payments to millions of Americans. ABC News business correspondent Deirdre Bolton joins us with more. Deirdre, so what stands out to you from this massive proposal, and what would it mean for the economy? $1.9 trillion plowed into it.
Terry, you used the word massive. You listed some of the components. This is what stands out. It is ambitious by anybody's measure, but it's by design. I think one of the lessons that we collectively learned from coming out of the last recession, 2007 to 2009, was that a piecemeal strategy really didn't work, and the recovery for the U.S. economy honestly just took a lot longer than was necessary.
Okay. So I'm going to sit here and I got to stop right here because they're just going to go into a lot of stuff. I just need the graphic. So here's the America Rescue Plan that Biden wants to put out. Of course, has a price tag of nearly $2 trillion. It does include the $1,400 checks to most Americans, $130 billion to reopen schools, and $160 billion program of $160 billion to build the actual way of getting everybody vaccinated. So that's actually the top end of it. Again, like I said before, it is interesting to see exactly where it stands at this point. I'm kind of curious myself a little bit, just because, well, to be really honest, how can I put this in so many ways? Well, first, I do like some things on it. Now, don't get me wrong. This was in the Democrats' wheelhouse as far as, wanting to push, $2 billion, $2.5 billion, only because they were trying to get more people's, trying to get money to where it needs the most. Now, $1,400 checks, I understand a lot of people are going to sit there and say, well, Biden promised us $2,000. Okay. Well, you already got $600 barely after nearly 9 months of arguing because, again, Democrats were trying to push as much money into the people's hands, and conservatives who had all the stroke at that moment sat there and said, no, they don't need this. But you want to give money to, corporations, things of that nature. But I digress. So $1,400 is $1,400 on top of the $600 that you're getting, and I see checks, and I'm thinking to myself the only other time, which again, this bothers me. This bothers me because I'm like, I see checks, but again, like I said, it's his first plan. I don't see continual. Now, Bernie Sanders had the best idea when it came to this. He sat there and said, following other countries, we need to start putting $2,000 a month in the hands of Americans until this pandemic is over. Canada has done it. Australia has done it. Most countries that actually have economical faults have started to pay out those emergency plans to their citizens. I always say Canada because Canada had the best example of getting $2,000 in each of its citizens' hands and doing so within 2 weeks. So I understand this sounds like a single payment. I mean, from what and how it reads and how it looks, $1,400 to most people, of course, you will still get an additional, I believe it's $600, $700, depending on how many children that you have. It makes sense to a certain degree, but at the same time, I just wonder, I hope, and I say again, because I know with the new Congress coming in, and the Dems do have the House, they now have the Senate, you now have a Democratic president. At this point, for the next 2 years, the Dems pretty much run the House. I would hope I would hope that what happens from this is that this will become eventual stimulus payments that will equal up to monthly payments, because that's what a lot of people need right now. Now, of course, what they also don't say in this is that there is a $600 unemployment assistance that'll be retroactive on top of what they're already getting, a little bit less than the $800 that they were getting under the initial plan, and of course, the $130 billion to reopen schools. Let's be honest, I'm right now, with the way coronavirus is and the fact that we're seeing variants out there, I understand the need to reopen schools, but at the same time, we really need to focus on the vaccination part. Like, again, vaccinations are happening out there, and of course, right now, first responders, those who are in multiple areas like truck stop drivers, and of course, nurses, doctors being inoculated, they're usually the first ones up. So I get that. Now I just think that maybe that 130 should have kind of been combined with the 160 to really get awareness out there, because again, in a different article, Biden has sat there and said that he wants 100 million people inoculated within his 101st days of office. And it is possible. It is to a certain extent. But it's going to be more difficult just because the way that Trump's administration has responded to actually handling the current crisis. So I get that as well. And also, what isn't mentioned in this plan is the child tax credit, which again, a lot of people do look forward to. Forgive me, my hair is doing every which way but slaying down right now. But again, the child tax credit, that does get increased from $3,000 to $3,600 for if you have children under 6 and under. It does decrease to $3,200 if your kids are over the age of 6 and up. So at least that's being put back to what it used to be. I can't knock that. But again, it's just the whole thing of, not current stimulus plans. It's not giving a current stimulus plan. It just sounds like another one-time check payment. But again, like I said, this could be going forward. That is subject to change. But so far, I do like the plan. And guys, let me know what you think in the comments as I try to go back and read to them. What you say, Nunu? Where is that we can't afford reparations BS? Well, here's the thing. I don't expect, and I know what you're talking about reparations. And again, here's the thing. You, in this current political climate, unless, and I point this out, I keep pointing this out. In this current political climate, you will never get both sides to say reparations. You never will. You never will. The reason why I say that is because, honestly, we already know conservatives ain't looking at us. Barely the Democrats look at us. If you want us to turn around and get reparations, and I make this argument all the time, the only way that you're going to get reparations to truly happen in this country is that you have to change who's governing it. You have to. I point this out all the time. Please do not expect the Democrats, don't expect the Republicans. You might even get some from independents. The thing about this is, we will never get reparations with the current political parties and the people in them, because they're not going to look at us that way. Can you imagine? Yes, other countries have paid reparations. You are exactly right. But if you expect that in the U.S. with the current political climate right now, it is not going to happen. And it's like, are we still not black if we elect a supermajority? No. I don't understand your question on that one. Are we still not black if we elect a supermajority? If you, again, this goes back to what I said. I'll put it this way. Obama had proposed reparations, and then what happened? Couldn't get it done. One person who was the president couldn't get a body at the time, which again, that body was senators and was the body of a Senate and House of Representatives were ran by Republicans. He could not get those two houses to budge, even though he supported reparations. Bill Clinton, in his first term, also brought reparations. And this is when he had the House, 1992, when he had the House and the Senate both under him, both ran by Democrats. Bill Clinton, before he was inaugurated, talked about reparations for African Americans. He said so on the Arsenio Hall show. And you saw what happened then. And that was under a Democratic, really ran government, that reparations fell on deaf ears. So, I've always said it best. Should black people get reparations? Absolutely. Will it be done by the current political people that we have in control? No. Because again, you're looking in at even though you are still facing systemic racism, that's the only thing that is keeping these political powers together. At the same time, we will not get that. What did you say? It was in the Green Party's platform for the last 8 years. Obama did not, Bill Clinton not. He was asked a question. No, he was asked a question. And I got to correct you on that. Bill Clinton was actually not asked once, but 3 times during his first term. Obama was asked 4 times while he was running. And again, like I said, it goes back to what I said. One person, even in the highest political seat, is still unable to move Congress. At the same time, look at who we have in. And I keep pointing this out. If you want certain policies and things to change in America, the only way it changes is who we have elected. If the person that you have elected doesn't actually represent your values, then nothing's going to change. In the same sense, like I kept saying this entire time, look at Georgia. Georgia is a perfect example. Georgia itself voted conservative. And just now, for the first time in its entirety, has just elected its first black senator. In its time of Georgia joining the United States, has just elected its first black senator. Georgia, since 1992, has just voted Democrat. They didn't vote conservative even when a black man was running. So again, I say this before. We, above all else, if you want, like I said before, again, and I stress this, I'm not against reparations, Nunu, and I thank you for asking that question. I really do. I really thank you for that. But again, the only way things change is that we have to bring in the people who are going to do it for us, who are going to be our voice. But if they're not going to be our voice, what do you expect? Biden said we are not black and we didn't vote for him. Again, I sat there and I'm like, I laughed. I'm not gonna lie. When Biden said if we don't vote, Biden at that point, like I said, got a little too comfortable. He got a little too comfortable, and optics wise, I found it funny. If you don't vote for him against Donald Trump, you're not black. I cracked up. Now, from an optics standpoint, was that a poor choice of words? Absolutely. But like a guy who sat there and was like, dude, you have been around, that's when you're like, okay, Biden, you got a little too comfortable. You did. And he got corrected on that. Obama called it politically dangerous. Obama called it politically dangerous because the simple fact of the matter is he also added to that, it is politically dangerous, but it still must be done. But I don't see it being done within my timeline, within my time as president. He said that as a question because he was asked, how hard is it to have an entire House and Senate against you when you're trying to put forward your policies? So yeah, I know the quote you're talking about. But again, great questions, it really is. But moving right along, guys. Again, Biden's also plan, which also wasn't mentioned in the wasn't mentioned in the previous graphic, was also he was actually increasing the wage to $15 an hour. Now, the minimum wage, I should say. Now, the minimum wage currently, as it stands, is $7.29. Hasn't changed for nearly 11 years. However, I still believe, even though this is great, that he wants to do the federal mandate. He wants to do the federal minimum wage mandate to $15 an hour. A lot of people argue that it's not enough. I will be sitting there saying, and I said before, we need to go higher, because the minimum wage is basically designed that even at the lowest job, you can still be able to support yourself. Now, again, it's going to be interesting to see what it does, because I still want it to be higher. I still do. I have said this because I have sat there and said this from Jump Street about the minimum wage. No one can live off $7.29. That is way below the poverty line. $15 is a great start, but I still think in today's economy, when you look at GDP, when you look at our GDP, our inflation and productivity, the minimum wage should honestly be over $20 an hour. Now, I know a lot of people are saying we can't afford it. I disagree, because everything else has went up except our paychecks. And again, when Americans are spending because of the way our capitalist society is set up, the economy is dependent upon consumer spending. If consumers have more money, they are inclined to spend more. So why is it so hard to believe that $20 an hour for minimum wage is so hard? If you think about it, the more that people spend, the greater the economy is. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But like I said before, it'll be interesting to see if it gets increased, because again, this is his plan that has to be approved. And of course, and also another note before I move on, I expect Democrats to do well. Democrats, a lot of people are saying, the other side, the conservative side, is saying, well, we need to have a lot of bipartisanship and across the board. Here's my thing about bipartisanship: it doesn't work. It doesn't, because Republicans don't want to do that. Because when they had the House and the Senate, and Mitch McConnell ran everything, they steamrolled us. They steamrolled Democrats. They really did, and us as its constituents. Now the Democrats are on the other side of the stick. I'm sorry. If I was Chuck Schumer, if I was Nancy Pelosi, if I was AOC, it is now time to push forward progressive things. Now, the Democrats still have an issue with progressive people and movements, because again, what they're doing right now was something Bernie Sanders said to do a long time ago. So again, I'm not surprised that it took them this long. However, the plans that they have forth should be easy for them to get through as long as the Democrats stick together. So any Democrats, because I found out that 2 of them do watch this podcast and they did reach out to me, and I hopefully will have interviews with them. I'm, crossing fingers. But again, this is the time for Democrats to turn around and sit there and stomp on the necks and just get stuff done that should have been done a long time ago. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, moving on to Amazon, because I never thought I'd say that, because every time I say Amazon, I'm looking at my door because I'm expecting stuff. But again, going to Amazon, where Amazon, there's actually going to be, if you ever heard the words Amazon and Union, you would have thought you would have lost your mind. But apparently at a plant in Alabama, they are voting to actually start the first US-based union. Now, again, if you've heard of Amazon, you've heard the horror stories working at Amazon. Bathroom breaks, trying to get a bathroom break when they want your productivity up. The simple fact of the matter is just that there were, some working conditions that were just beyond terrible. If you're an Amazon driver, you don't know whether or not you're going to have a job by tomorrow, things of that nature. However, having a union, and I keep saying this, I cannot stress this enough. Having a union works. Unions actually got us guaranteed 40-hour work weeks. They got us vacation time. They got us hazard pay. They got us overtime. And this was all based upon the fact that unions at the time worked. So, of course, Amazon, like Dell and other companies, hate the word union, because that means that they actually have to do right by the people. So again, this particular unionization has been coming along, in which the workers there are voting for it. Now, if it does happen, of course, people predict that if the union does get created at this Alabama plant, and of course, me being in Nashville, and the fact that there are at least 3 Amazon manufacturing plants here in Nashville, if a plant just happens to start a union here, if a plant happens to start a union here in Alabama, imagine Nashville, imagine Seattle, imagine Kentucky, all the areas, because really predominantly Amazon has started putting their warehouses in the South, just because of right to work laws and things of that nature, even though Amazon is paying above board. However, we need unions. That's the thing about it, is unions are needed for that very simple fact of the matter. And again, what they actually provide. So as I'll be watching that story to see exactly what happens, but I am fairly certain that if unions do actually happen, and a union does happen in Amazon, in that plant, it will happen and probably go to a nationwide one. What are you guys saying? Bernie was against reparations. Okay. Unions were started to keep skilled black workers out of jobs. You know what, Nunu? One day we're gonna have to have a conversation about that, because historically, you are about 20% right, historically wise. But unions were made to keep work white. No, but anyway, keeping going right along, guys. Unfortunately, there was another fatal police shooting involving a black man, and well, I'm just gonna let the story play for itself.
Case out of Texas where a call for help to police turned deadly. The family of 52-year-old Patrick Warren called police after they say that he was having some sort of mental health episode. Patrick is seen in this video walking out to the officer with his arms up. Then moments later, you hear gunshots. It's not completely clear what happened based on this video alone, but joining us now are two people who can help provide us with some of the details to explain. The son of Patrick Warren Jr., along with family attorney Lee Merritt. Our thanks to both of you. Patrick, want to express our condolences for the loss of your father. Can you just kind of give us a sense of exactly what happened that day?
My dad, he started praising God very loudly in the house, letting us know that, hey, I'm in spiritual warfare. And he kept praising God. Eventually, he started getting so loud while he was praising. I stepped in to tell him, hey, Dad, calm down. Something's going on. He let me know it was spiritual and that he needed to praise God because the evil one was coming. Once he started talking like that, I was like, hey, something's going on. Let's reach out to a mental health resource officer that we had spoken to previously. We called for them to actually come out to the house. They never let us know that dispatch, that particular resource officer was no longer available for that day, or that he wouldn't be coming out, or a resource officer altogether wouldn't be coming out. And so we were surprised when a police officer showed up to the house. Once he showed up to the house, I met him at the door. I told him to come in. I let him know that my father was going through something and please no firearms. He was speaking to my father through the hallway, and my father was inviting, but the officer, he seemed a little hostile, so he asked him to get off the property. Let us know that he didn't have time for it. He doesn't do things like this, and slammed the door and went back outside. From that point, we heard a knock at the door, so my father, after dealing with someone that was hostile, he wanted to actually open the door. So he opened the door, and when he opened the door, we saw an infrared beam on the door, which made me concerned because I'm sitting in the front. I'm holding a 6-month-old, and I have my brother in the front as well. So we're concerned. So we all kind of run to set this little one down. We run to the door. My mom is now running to the door, and our family friends, we're all running here. And that's kind of what you see transpire on the tape. You'll see that had an infrared beam out. He tased my father. And at the point of tasing my father, we were trying to see why things were escalating so fast. So we're yelling, we're screaming, it's a lot going on. And my father proceeded to get up off the ground, and that's when he shot him. We were trying to figure out, why would you shoot him? And we're just looking for answers.
And Lee, at this point, you're not only calling for the firing of that officer, but also the arrest of that officer. Has anyone from the police department reached out to you or to your family to explain why this officer was sent alone to a call that was about a mental health crisis?
No, and I'm sorry, Pat. They instead, we spoke with the prosecutor for the region. The region is Bell County. The prosecutor there is named Henry Garza, and he's responsible for prosecuting this case, for issuing arrest warrants. And we've encouraged him yesterday to speak with the family about the evidence that they have. Apparently, he didn't even have the video evidence that was available to the media. And so we're working with him now to make sure that he has all the information that he needs to issue an arrest warrant for Reynaldo Contreras, which is Contreras, which is the name of the officer, Reynaldo Contreras. Yes, we believe that an arrest warrant should be issued for him immediately based on the probable cause evidence that's circulating the internet now. And we of course want Killeen PD and the city of Killeen to investigate what policies and procedures they have in place to deal with mental health calls. A call for help from a family should never result in a man being murdered on his front lawn.
And Patrick, what are the next steps for you and for your family? Do you plan on pursuing any sort of legal action against the police department?
Absolutely. That's why we have Lee Merritt here. We want to make sure this never happens to anyone else again. I have a special needs little brother, and I think, like, what if it was him? You know, what if someone called the police on him and him needing medical attention or mental health attention? What if that was him? So we definitely plan to pursue this, and I'll actually let Lee Merritt take care of all of that. And I'm hoping, we're able to get justice for my father, because that's the main thing here. Is I never want this to happen to anyone else. I never want them to forgive my father, because he didn't deserve this.
And going forward, you were talking about your brother. Would you ever call the police again for help?
I can't say as of right now I would. I don't know who you can call in the event that, your loved one is going through something and not like themselves for help. I don't know. I don't trust it. So I personally wouldn't. We would just try to deal with the crisis, the best way we would know how, but it's not an option for me at this point.
Right. And Lee, what are the options? I mean, we talk about the war on mental health. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of having someone who's equipped specifically to handle these types of calls, to accompany perhaps police officers for the safety not only of the officer, but also the person who's involved. And if the police department doesn't have those kinds of resources now, how should these kinds of situations be handled?
And this case was a perfect example, because in this case, you had a good cop and a bad cop. On the first day, a good cop, a resource officer with mental health training, was dispatched to the family's home the day before Patrick was murdered. He spoke to Patrick. He built up a rapport. He engaged him in a way that was not hostile or violent. It wasn't like your normal police officer. And he was able to get Patrick to some help. And Patrick went to the hospital with him voluntarily. And then the following day, when Patrick began to deteriorate again, the family called for additional help. And this time they got the bad cop. And that's what we don't need. There's policies like the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act before Congress right now that says we need more resources for those good cops. We need more resources for mental health workers to respond to families in crisis appropriately. We need to invest in additional money into healthcare resources to meet a healthcare crisis. 20% of Americans have undiagnosed mental health conditions. And like he said, even in this household, this is a situation that may arise again. His 23-year-old little brother has Down syndrome, and law enforcement hasn't been taught to engage someone like his little brother or Black people in the community who, like everyone else in America, suffer from mental health issues. And so we need to take a realistic approach to reforming police that necessarily requires investment in our healthcare system.
And he's absolutely right. Unfortunately, Patrick Warren's family, like I said, losing a loved one to police violence is just, there is no answer. I mean, they're wanting answers into why he shot, considering they were asking for assistance with someone who was having mental health issues. Again, this goes back to what I've said about law enforcement training. The simple fact of the matter is that you could have training for 6 months and then expect to be efficient. And mental health, especially among all of us, should be one of the things that officers should be trained into as far as de-escalation and things of that nature. It only makes sense because, again, the family was calling to ask for help. Now, again, like I said, with mental health, it is now it's getting a lot more exposure than it used to get. But now, because of law enforcement officers, I'm all for it. They need to be trained. They need to be trained not just once, but regularly every year. It's almost like for me working in IT, we have to basically train our employees to look for threats in emails, things of that nature, just because the company I work for will always have people trying to get at its resources. So of course, the simple fact of the matter is we have to train. Officers are no different. Now, I know that this man, his family said that he was, having some mental issues. They already reached out, and a person who was trained to acknowledge and respond to those types of issues did call out and sit there, try to work with them and things of that nature. I can't knock that, because that actually means they are responding to the individual and not responding to the problem, as far as, hearing a Black man raving and looting and things of that nature. An untrained officer will see it as a threat. For the simple fact of the matter is, the family needed help, and the officer decided that at that point, shots need to be fired. Again, the officer should be brought into question why he had to fire shots. The man was obviously unarmed. He may, of course, his family said he may have been disturbed. It happens. It happens when you have those, when you're having mental issues. You don't know what'll be triggers. You don't know what'll be breaks. But you have to treat that as a non-lethal option when dealing with those individuals. Now, again, he was praying, nothing crazy. The family should have not called the police. We can't put ourselves in those shoes. I mean, here's the thing. When something isn't right, you can't put yourself in that situation. Here's what I keep on saying the entire time. We can't put ourselves in those situations just because we don't know exactly what that person will do. Hence the reason why, if there's a history of mental issues, it only makes sense that that person just might need to get the help. This might need to get the help that, again, may have been offered in different areas. So I can't say he was praying. I can't say that they should never call the police. It depended upon them. They thought what they did. In my mind, I'm thinking they thought what they did was best at the time, that maybe he was having a mental break and he just probably needed assistance. It's just the fact that, unfortunately, the cop didn't see it that way and decided to end that man's life. So yes, he should be brought up on that topic. Is the best way I could put it. But again, this was not where I would sit there and say, again, what we saw again with Ahmaud Arbery, which that case still going. Breonna Taylor, in which, of course, 2 detectives that actually processed the warrant got fired, but that's still not enough. And on top of that, Jacob Blake will never get justice because none of the cops will ever be tried for shooting a man 7 times in the back. So again, it's hard to be optimistic that these officers who decide to pull guns on black people will still ever face justice. But again, we will cover those stories as they develop. He was not on the doorbell camera erratic. We don't know that. Again, all we have is what the family saw, the officer, and unfortunately the deceased. Now, aside from that, from the camera side of it, it just looks like a cop shot a black man. That's what it looks like, if you want to get to the literal side of it. But again, like I said, we'll follow that story as it develops, because if the officer had a body cam, then eventually that camera evidence will eventually be shown. So we're just going to follow it as it lies. So we also have some other news, which again I like to call it's great news, but it is way late.
Reporting on the Flint water crisis for years, tonight the former governor of Michigan and 8 officials have been charged with willful neglect. Here's ABC's Alex Perez.
Tonight, the former governor of Michigan, Rick Snyder, charged in connection with the Flint water crisis.
Any comment on the charges, Governor Snyder?
Years after toxic levels of lead were discovered in the city's water and an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease killed at least 12.
People of the state of Michigan versus Richard Dale Snyder.
Prosecutors charging Snyder with 2 misdemeanor counts of willful neglect of duty. He's pleaded not guilty. 8 other state officials also facing charges, including 2 who are facing 9 counts each of involuntary manslaughter.
This case is about justice, truth, accountability, poisoned children, lost lives.
The horrifying ordeal unfolding in this mostly black city of about 100,000 people when, to save money, the state switched the city's water supply to come from the Flint River. Leanne Walters was one of the first residents to ring the alarm.
There are huge victories that have accomplished, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
Nearly 7 years later, even though officials now say the tap is safe, residents like Shirley Drake still rely on bottled water.
I don't trust the water in the pipes.
Jim Ananek, a Michigan state senator, doesn't like his 5-year-old son drinking the water.
Especially in younger people, we're going to have to deal with this for a generation. Some people I don't think will ever feel there's justice, right? But I think criminal convictions of folks will be a start.
And David, the former governor and the others charged have all posted bail and been released. David?
Now, don't get me wrong. I had been saying this, like I said, it's really 7 years later. I call it 7 years too late. I had sat there and said this nearly 2 years ago when I first started this podcast, that about the Flint water crisis. It's the simple fact of the matter is that was attempted. I mean, it was genocide. If you think about it, how is it that you knew that the water itself switching to this, and you've had and like I said, we don't know how far this stretches back. Even though this was 7 years when they caught wind of it, it could have been well before that. That now generations of children are affected because of high lead and everything else that was found in that water. There have been multiple issues with kids. There have been multiple issues with adults. And that city like I said, that city may take generations to recover. And even though, for the simple fact of the matter is, when Flint water, and again, I'm not from Michigan, I can't comment on that. But here's the thing I do know: when something that you've been given has been hurting you for multiple years, it is hard to literally trust anything after they say it's safe. Like here in Tennessee, nobody drinks out of the Cumberland River. Nobody. That water, even though people swim in it, I don't know why. Even the lakes around here, nobody drinks out of them. Why? Because, well, the EPA laws are a little bit loose around Tennessee. But again, it's that whole thing of saying, well, it is safe to drink it. Well, again, when you're telling citizens who have been, boiling that very same water for God knows how long, when you sit there and tell them something's safe, you can't blame them. You cannot blame them for their disbelief. Because even though you have people sitting there drinking water, sitting there drinking that same water, it's like, okay, you made that choice. Again, this whole idea that I said, now, again, going away from the water, I have been saying that the former governor and his entire administration should be held liable. Should have been held liable. Not only for the fact that when they found out about it, did nothing, then got national attention, and still took a while for them to get something. I mean, keep in mind, they're still having contaminated water up there. They say the tap water is safe, but realistically, they're still changing out the pipes. They still haven't switched their water source back to the original one. So again, it's one of those things where I sit there and say, for the simple fact of the matter, I'm happy. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy that they've been brought to trial. Do I think anything will happen? It remains to be determined. It remains to be determined because I'm not sure what evidence the prosecution will bring forward to bring charges. That also being said, it took 7 years, and no telling how much damage has been done to those people there in Flint, Michigan. That's all I'm saying. 7 years. And it might take another 20 years just for it to be considered normal. Really. For it to be considered normal. Like I said before, a lot of people growing up said, "Oh, boil the water." When you got drinking water, I still do it here at my home in Tennessee. Boil the water. I never drink water straight from the tap. It boils first, and then I put in the refrigerator. I'm just saying, I can understand. But like I said, we'll follow that story as it goes along. So our last story that we got, guys, again, is another one that actually kind of struck to me just because of what happened with this child.
Suit filed today against Sheriff Lopinto is filled with false claims.
And a local family is blaming deputies for the death of their autistic son. Ria Wamba Logan has the latest.
How do you reconcile with yourself that there are no new memories to be made with him in it?
Donna Lou breaks down as she talks about a missing hole in her family following the death of her 16-year-old son, Eric Parsa.
Not being able to see him or hear his voice has been devastating to us.
It's almost a year to the day the teen, who suffered from severe autism and intellectual disabilities, died outside a Metairie laser tag. Deputies responded after getting calls from the store after the family says the teen had a meltdown and didn't cooperate with leaving.
They violated the most basic tenets of good law enforcement, and it resulted in the loss of a life.
The family is now suing Jefferson Parish Sheriff Joe Lopinto and 7 responding deputies. The lawsuit alleges deputies hit and sat on the 16-year-old while, quote, holding him face down for approximately 7 minutes.
Deputies should be trained in, or are trained in some circumstances, for ways that they can reduce the need for force with a person with severe autism. That didn't happen here.
The sheriff's office vehemently denies the allegations in the lawsuits. In a statement, the department spokesperson writes, quotes, the lawsuit is rife with false claims and malicious accusations against the first responding deputies. Captain Jason Rivard says when a deputy responded, he tried to defuse the situation as the teen was hitting himself and his father. Rivard said investigators allowed Donna Liu to stay close as deputies intervened, quote, so that she could help first responders in diffusing her son's violent behavior. But the family's lawsuit claims deputies failed to de-escalate or reduce the use of force on their son.
Not a day goes by that we don't yearn for Eric and grieve the loss of his life and the future that he would have had.
And normally the sheriff's office does not respond to pending litigation. However, in this lawsuit, a department spokesperson says it felt compelled to do so because the sheriff believed the lawsuit slanders his.
Their name because he's the course sheriff's always going to back his deputies. Let's just be honest about that. For the simple fact of the matter, guys, like in this case, again, this goes back to police training and those with mental issues. As an uncle of autistic children, I understand that you cannot predict their behavior. So again, they will have meltdowns, but autism itself, like I always point this out because a lot of people do not understand autism. And when I found out that two of my, one of my niece and nephews, both twins, did have autism, it's a learning process. It really is. But at the same time, it doesn't make them different from any children. If anything, they're both very brilliant, very bright, but they do occasionally will have a meltdown, and you just have to work with them. Now, again, this goes back to law enforcement. Law enforcement in itself isn't trained or should be its lack of training, I should say, goes to those with mental issues or attributes, which again, if they don't know how to respond to it, they only respond to it in violence. Because again, with children who have autism and they're hitting themselves, you have to figure out not only what is the trigger, but what's the calming effect, which is what a lot of people call it is. Because when they go through their episodes, a lot of people say you have to ride it out. A lot of people sit there and say you just have to find what calms them and, get them down to a calm state. Law enforcement, depending on where you're at and depending on the level of training that they have, will not be able to do those things because they haven't been trained. And again, sitting on him face down, again, George, it's those I can't breathe, the Eric Gardner, the George Floyds. It just comes back to where, sitting on somebody for lack of, trying to get them to breathe. And trust me, again, why in the world are we still at this point of where sitting on them where they can't breathe is just common practice? And yeah, you're right, Nunu. It's the reason why the sheriff, he's gonna back up his people no matter what, because for optics. So yeah, you can call it slander because that's what he's probably gonna call it on his face. But just to get away from that, guys, like I said before, it is sad that with autism and mental health issues, this is why I say there's a growing call about defunding the police. And not just defunding them financially, but understanding that they need to go through a lot more training, that they need to be aware of mental health issues and how to actually deal with them and de-escalate negotiations and try to, talk first, and then unless lethal action is required, then you pull the piece. But like I said before, this just adds up, and it's sad that a family lost their son just because an officer didn't recognize the signs. But hey, Vaughn, what's going on? But last story I got, guys, before we get to our feel good news segment, I find this one completely funny, and I mean completely funny. And this is before the good news segment. The NRA seeks bankruptcy protection as they plan to move from New York to Texas because the NRA, or the National Rifle Association, which, if you've heard of them, have always been the resounding voice behind every school shooting, saying that, they're going to collect your guns, they're going to change the gun laws, they're going to count how much ammo that you have, they're going to count how many guns you have, and all this stuff. Keep in mind, this all came from them, where they sat there and said, we're losing because they lost their endorsements, they've lost a lot of members to the point to where they are now seeking bankruptcy protection. I think they're filing a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, if I believe. Yeah, they're filing a Chapter 11 bankruptcy and moving their headquarters from New York to Texas. Why? Taxes. I mean, trust me, Why do you think Dorito moved from New York to Florida? It wasn't because he didn't like New York. It's because Florida's tax laws are a little bit more lax than New York's. In the same sense, so's Texas. Because in the South, they don't believe in taxes unless you're a certain shade. But anyway, I just thought that was funny just because they're treating this as a normal procedure. When I thought to myself, this was the funniest thing on earth because the NRA single-handedly has gun lobbied for certain things not to go through, such as universal background checks, such as all purchases have to require an ID. And I will keep saying this. I will keep saying this for the simple fact of the matter. I'm in Tennessee. Don't get me wrong. I'm a gun owner. I am. But I do it responsibly. That being said, there are gun trade knife shows here in Tennessee that you can go to. I kid you not, to this day, I can walk in there with three stacks. I can walk in there with 3 stacks. I guarantee I can walk out of there with 5 guns and nobody will ask me for my ID. Because it's not required. Even though now they're trying to push laws through where you have to have it has to happen at FFL or those that have a federal firearms license, or have to have purchases there, because these gun trade knife shows don't require that much paperwork, especially here in the South. This is where I keep on saying a lot of this needs to happen as far as background checks, especially a background check, because people go, well, if you find out that you are a pedophile or you are an abuser or you've hurt people, then absolutely you shouldn't have a gun. If you have a record, you shouldn't have a gun, personally. But again, that's just a handful of things. Of course, bump stocks, ARs, things, AR style weaponry, it goes down the line. So I'm not mad about the NRA getting bankruptcy and possibly going out the door. Chances are they probably will still be around in some capacity. But again, I just thought that was funny, just because this comes from the same group that will sit there and say nothing when an armed black individual was being shot and the NRA is silent, but let school children get shot and the NRA is going to sit there and say, well, this is gonna be another gun conversation again. It really is. That's why they try to sit there and say that. What'd you say, Nunu? A degree? Yes, I think officers should have a degree in criminal justice, but I also think that they need to take mandated. If you really want to be honest about it, I do think all officers should have a degree in criminal. They should all have a degree in criminal justice. They should also have annual mandatory mental health training as well as de-escalation training. The reason why I say that is because a lot of overseas law enforcement already have that in place, especially in Finland, England, Scotland, New Zealand, Australia, Japan. Japan being one of the more stricter places because their gun laws are so freaking strict that if you break their laws, that is a 15-year mandatory sentence in their prisons. And that's strict. But what you guys are also saying, gun control for black people was their call before. Yeah. Because they were actually in response to the federal law of 1976, because the Black Panthers were armed and doing it legally, and Congress freaked out. Tesla to Texas, yeah, again, that's laws. To be freed every day for false accounts and arrests. You gotta help me with that one. But anyway, with that being said, guys, like I said, let's go ahead and get into our feel good news segment, because like I said here on How the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot that's usually doom and gloom. And like I said, it's the weekend. Hopefully it's sunny where you're at. I know in Tennessee the weather changes every 5 minutes, so we're sunny and cold right now. But we want to leave you guys on a good note. Always leaving you guys with a good impression about the world and just send out good vibes. That's what we try to do. And I always love these lottery stories, because that's the first one I got, and it's by a nurse. A nurse who works with COVID patients won a $1 million jackpot. And before I do actually get into the story, I don't know if you guys actually play lottery or not, but if you never have, tonight's a good night. That's all I'm saying. Tonight's a good night. If you got $2, like I said, don't go out here. On a side note, don't go out here and spend $100 on lottery tickets. Let me just be honest about that. If you spend $100 on lottery tickets, my God, could I have your job? I spend $2 for one. And I know a lot of people out there, especially with the Powerball right now, because the Powerball I think is 650 million, I think, give or take a zero. A I know a lot of people right now are going to be out and about getting lottery tickets. That's cool. Everybody should have a dream. I dream about winning the lottery because I had this dream about my job that I want to do so badly. But like I said, I shouldn't, don't jump a boat unless you got another boat to jump into. That's all I'm saying. But again, try your luck. You never know. $2 could lead to 650 million or 400 and some. What is it? 650, then government takes out 20. You may wind up with 400 million, but still, who needs 400 million? You're not going to be able to blow 400 million in your lifetime responsibly. The same thing with the Mega Millions. Mega Millions will be approaching, I think, 800 million. Again, you never know. Spend $2. If you got $2, cool. If not, or we don't play the lottery, hey, I understand. I know I'm trying because, trust me, in the words of Otis Redding, I got dreams to remember. I'm not gonna sing it, but that's one of my favorite Otis Redding songs. I've got dreams to remember. I'm sorry, I said I wasn't gonna sing it. Anyway, let me go ahead and get to this because again, y'all guys did not come to hear me sing, even though I sing terribly. Again, like I said, this one nurse in North Carolina did take a $30 scratch off, which again, still. Which this $30 scratch off has a $1 million prize in which she did win, and she did not know it until she left work. And then went to a lottery office and found out that the ticket was real. She decided to take the lump sum payment of $424,500 after federal, state, and tax withholdings. And again, she's saying right now she'll take it slow and needs to figure out what to do with the money. And I can't blame her for that. And again, I keep on saying this about nurses. Nurses and doctors, you guys hear me say this at the end of every podcast. Always thanking them because to my mind, nurses and doctors, nurses' aid, doctors' aides are just similar to teachers. Those are professions that don't get paid enough for what they do. And again, in this COVID pandemic world, they are being the real MVPs right now. So again, I love the fact to see someone in those professions actually, have some life-changing money. I can never knock that. Wait, save on. It was snowing on Brawley and sunny on Bordeaux. That sounds about right. 400 million. Well, it's just spitballing, Nunu. Because I know federal and state withholdings, depending on where you're at, they take a good chunk out. Don't get me wrong. When those lottery monies get up to about 400, 500 million, yeah, they take a good amount of money out for federal and tax withholdings. I can't remember exactly. You can go on the Powerball site because the Powerball site will actually tell you the cash option. But I'm spitballing because I think it was 600, so I think the cash value is like minus 200 million. Now, I could be completely wrong about that, but still, 400 million. You're not going to blow through it. I'm sorry. Really highly constrictive purchases. If you can blow through 400 million in your lifetime, please tell me what you bought. A country? An island? 50 jets? I'm like, what did you buy with 400 million? Not to go completely off subject, but I really want to know, how do you blow through 400 million in your lifetime? I can buy everything I want and I will still have $399 million. That's all I'm saying. Wait, say Vaughn, back when I lived in Jackson, pick a gas station. Bet you'll find an old man with $50 worth of scratch offs. Shoot, I could do that right now, go up the street to my grocery store. New it's like a 1/3. Yeah, it's like a 1/3 of it. Like I said, new. I don't know exactly because it depends on the state. Like I know if your state has additional taxes, they take more out. But I always shoot for whatever. If it's over 100 million, they're at least taking 80 million out. So it could be 5, it could be 4. I just don't know exactly. I'm buying the country. I can't knock you for that, Vaughn. But anyway, like I said, if you got $2 today, guys. Or if you want to go for both, like I said, you never know. Or if you like scratch offs, responsibly. Don't let scratch offs leave you broke. That's all I'm saying. Just play responsibly, guys. That's all I'm saying. Spend $2, $4. That's not bad, but be responsible. That's all I'm saying. I know I'm playing today. I'm definitely playing. Can we run numbers again? You want to record line, new? You can't say numbers. You can't say numbers due to on recorded line. Anyway, getting on to story number 2 getting on to story number 2. I love the fact of watching kids, especially high schoolers, actually get into college. But I love the fact of watching them get into college, in the dream college they want. And I love this story.
You like a boost?
Yes.
Here we go. All right. Waiting to be accepted by your dream college can be one of the most anxious times in a young person's life. So check out what happens when this student in Kentucky logs on to see if he got into Duke University.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
Status update?
Status update.
Oh, it's in welcome Frank, and I was like, oh.
Let's go! Oh my God! Look at this!
Oh, yeah, he's in. And that, by the way, was his sister. She's there for moral support to celebrate him. That's a moment.
Yes.
That's a moment right
there. It's a happy blue couple.
I ain't mad about that. I'm not, because, you know, like I said, it's cool for college, and don't get me wrong, you can do trade schools as well. Trade schools, I wish they brought trade schools before I went to college. But again, it's one of those things, like I said before, it's cool to actually go follow your dream. And like I said, that young man wanted to get to Duke University, and he got in, and that's cool. And I love the fact his whole explosion was like, come on, let's go. And I was like, you can't help but be hype off that and be proud. So, rumble, young man, rumble, to be able to, sounded like Thomas said, let's go. Yes, that is Thomas when Thomas is hype about anime, Vaughn. You are exactly right, even though he will blow out your eardrums when he says it. But, again, I love the fact of watching people pursue their dreams, especially for higher learning. So, again, I'm not knocking that one as well. But, like I said, just the whole, let's go! Let's go! It's infectious. It is. I feel the same way. I feel the same way when I get hyped about stuff. It's like, it's little victories. I will always say appreciate little victories, because again, it's a feeling of accomplishment. Like that dryer behind me. That dryer behind me yesterday, because I posted on my Facebook, it was a pain in the ass to get to the heating element that I had to fix. So again, I love the fact of the matter of just, like I said, little accomplishments always help. It's almost like me. Like, I love when I got accepted to MTSU. Oh, I thought about side story a little bit. Did I tell you? I never told y'all that I wish I joined a frat. I really wish I did. We had fraternities on MTSU, but I was too much, and forgive me for my language, I was too much of a chicken shit to actually rush, because they had rush week there, and there was 2 frats I was looking at. And this is probably one of the very few regrets that I actually have in college, that I never did rush. I never did join a fraternity. I always thought that was the coolest thing. I mean, not because of the jackets and the shirts and, you know, the whole dance and stuff, because I'm the most uncoordinated sumbitch you ever met. So thank God if I ever did join a frat, which you still can, some fraternities still accept older members, don't get me wrong. But I just, in my spring chicken days, that was the one regret I had. I mean, Greek Row, me and Vaughn were there at MTSU almost the same time. Me and Vaughn were both there, and he could tell you about Greek Row. And I always thought to myself, I was like, one of the very regrets that I had, because both me and Vaughn, of course, yeah, I knew you were going to say that, Vaughn, that was me for MTSU. Yeah. But yeah, I just love the fact, like I said, that's one of the regrets I take away from college, was that I never joined a fraternity. And I really wanted to. I really did. I just know which one, because I know about the Qs. I didn't think I was Q material. I didn't think I was alpha. I didn't think I was alpha material. I didn't really know which frat to go to, honestly, where I fit in, because again, I didn't do enough research at the time. Different from the guy I am now, but go back to 18, 19-year-old me, no fucking clue. But anyway, congratulations to the man going to Duke University, because he definitely does deserve it. What'd you guys say? We need that energy for HBCUs, though. Yeah, I fully support HBCUs. But again, it's like, we need to have that same energy as well, for Morehouse, for Florida, oh God, I could go down that whole entire list. I'm not trying to go down the whole entire list because my brain is already scrambled 6 different directions. But Nunu, you are right. HBCU should also be included as well. But again, congrats to that young man for, making his dream come true. And hopefully he, makes the most out of it. The last story I got, guys, is a little bit out the norm because, again, we find different ways of helping children through different forms. And I have to give this young lady credit because I never saw this coming.
Woman who is bringing together 2 of her passions, horses and reading, to help bridge the literacy gap among children, and it's a significant gap. A national study found that only 35% of 4th graders read at or above grade level. They're not considered proficient. Vladuce now shows us the cowgirl who's trying to change that by trailblazing new ways to get kids engaged.
Have you ever seen a horse before? Thank you so much.
We'll bring you some more books. And
thank you.
Every month, Caitlin Gooch shares a little piece of her family farm with young North Carolinians. The real-life cowgirl takes a horse and a trailer full of books from the 89-acre land of her childhood and leads them towards one goal: inspiring kids to read.
I noticed that the literacy rates in our country need some improvement. So with volunteering with children in daycare centers and after-school programs, kids always love to see pictures and videos of the horses, and they would beg their parents to come out to my house.
That experience inspired Caitlin to combine her lifelong love of reading and horses.
I'm very blessed to have all of these amazing horses, this amazing barn, and I just want to share it with children. And why not use that energy that they have when they see the horses to get them excited about reading?
For 3 years, she poured that excitement into Saddle Up and Read, a nonprofit that encourages kids to read while interacting with horses.
I'll take a horse in the horse trailer, and it's full of books, and I'll set up and I'll walk the horse around until kids come outside. Because who doesn't notice a horse walking around the neighborhood? Their mouths just drop wide open, and sometimes kids go like this because they're just so excited. They don't know what to do.
Saddle Up and Read is gaining national attention, including a shout-out from Oprah Winfrey on Twitter. Caitlin's small North Carolina community has already taken notice.
she goes above and beyond by helping kids learn how to read in a unique way. And every time she comes anywhere, it's a flock of people that want to just come and be around her and just experience reading for the first time.
Caitlin has the patience to teach riding, to teach kids to read, to take the time with them.
Caitlin's parents say her passion has always shone through, even as a little girl.
She's always had a heart for animals, a heart for children. She just has that sparkle in her eye when she's around them.
And this cowgirl wants to share that love with a diverse generation of kids.
When I was younger, people could not believe that I had horses because I am Black. So I'm doing my very best to get out there and show other kids of color that this is very possible for them. And it's really disheartening to hear some of their stories because they're at these barns where they want to feel welcome and they feel like, you know, all eyes are on them because they are Black.
What do you think is the magic behind the combination of the horses and reading?
Horses bring this magic that's like, they can't talk, for one. So if a child does mess up while they're reading or while they're learning something new, a horse isn't going to say anything. They're really non-judgmental.
Caitlin is breaking down barriers and building up young readers and riders.
My daughter is so interested in horses, so this could be a start for her with her little horse journey and just inspiring us to give back and donate to our communities.
Caitlin dreams to one day open a brick and mortar store for Saddle Up and Read. She says she's already raised nearly $30,000 from people around the country who want to help. What a great story.
Wonderful
What a
story.
great person.
Yeah, Caitlin.
Says a lot, guys, doesn't it? And I said this before and I say this again, representation matters. And I cannot stress that enough, that representation matters. The thing about it is that a black woman that owns a farm and horses, and I'll be honest, the kid in me, every time I see a horse, I still want to go walk up and pet it, because in my mind, I woke up, I was raised on Mr. Ed, Wilbur. I get that. But, a horse that could talk just because they put peanut butter in its mouth to actually make the jaws move. But anyway, PETA aside, representation does matter, and I love the fact that she's using horses as a way to get kids to read. I have been saying this because a lot of kids don't see, black cowgirls or black cowboys, or they don't see us owning farms or gardens or things of that nature. So when we bring those things into play, again, you've inspired a child. I've said it best. My inspiration, going back to my sci-fi side, was Nichelle Nichols, LeVar Burton, Michael Dorn, excuse me. All those actors I just described were Whoopi Goldberg. Were all actors on a show called Star Trek. So again, the fact that I could see something on sci-fi to where black people were in higher positions inspired me. Because again, representation matters. I said it best about President Obama when he was elected. I sat there and said about, about to be Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. That matters. About how Stacey Abrams and a whole bunch of other people changed Georgia. How Black Lives Matter was actually started by a group of black women. How sororities, how the start of fraternities and sororities, especially the HBCUs, were a way for black people to actually come together and uplift and inspire each other while the doors were closed. Representation matters. Cowboys are black. Yeah, even bounty hunters. Actually, the most famous bounty hunter of all actually had a television show, The Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger was actually based off a black cowboy who was actually a bounty hunter. Probably one of the most baddest bounty hunters in recorded history. And the show was really based off of him. So again, I can keep going down the line about this, but I love what she does because she's using animals as a way to reach children, because what child is not fascinated by animals? Name one. I'm a big ass kid and I'm still fascinated by animals, except snakes, because those damn things can burn. But aside from that, like I said, I love the fact that she's introducing reading and literacy, education, critical thinking. All these things are missing from current education as it stands. So again, I love the fact that she's trying to bridge the gap. Bridge the gap through representation, bridge the gap through education. Teach the young ones that, hey, you can be a cowgirl or a cowboy if you want to. What do you say, Juan? USA versus black slaves. USA, us black slaves to interact with the native tribes during the West Coast expansion. Yeah, you're right. And used to call them cowboys. Yeah, you're exactly right, Vaughn. You are 100% right about that. But again, like I said, it's about the representation. That's all. That's why I love about these stories so much. That they're always representing what a black person can be when you show other kids that. And when you show other kids that, trust me, that alone speaks volumes. It really does. But with that being said, guys, that's really all that I have for this podcast, guys. So before I do get out of here, I do have to do some shameless plugging. Before I head to a house that's full of Green Bay Packers fans. Yeah. They're good people. They are good people. They're just Packers fans. And they let me know how bad they whooped them on my Titans. That's okay. We had a good season. That also being said, but let me talk about my buddy Vaughn, because I've been talking with him and Nunu, and I thank you both guys in the comments for talking. I really appreciate that. But let me speak about my buddy Vaughn, who will be returning. He'll be returning back with his podcast, because I've said this before. I miss his shows. I do miss him speaking. I do miss my buddy's I do miss my buddy because he brings a different flavor of an energy to his podcast that I wish I could reciprocate. I mean, I'm just me, and I know sometimes I can be funny, I can be serious, but he himself, he's just Vaughn. That's about the best way I could put it. But anyway, Big VZA Dot on Facebook. If you're his friend, cool. If not, he's friendly-ish. But once you're his friend, you'll be able to go to his video section to where you'll be able to see his current podcast as right now. I'll just go ahead and just blast through them as quickly as I can. The first one's called the VST of the Intercast. Now, what that is a news podcast. That news could be music, video games, or trailers as he loves to show. I call him the king of weird trailers just because he finds some interesting trailers. And don't get me wrong, he does find some good ones as well. Now, Vaughn, we got to talk, dude, because I watched Spell and I watched the other movies that you put on Netflix, and I want your opinion on those, so I hope you'll be able to get to me on that. And also, it's an interactive show because, as you can see right here, I have actually commented many a times on the things that he brings up. But again, interactive show just like mine, so definitely give it a look there. Just because it's family friendly, I'm going to call this one the RAF. Now, what is RAF? Well, it's a pool of ratchets we sometimes dip our toes to, take a break from life and have a chuckle. Some bills make you think, some bills make you cry. This one is basically called Frack Donald Trump because it's still one of my favorites that Vaughn has done, in which he shows videos related to it. Like my personal favorite of Trump supporters sitting outside the election office while praying to count the votes. Yes, how harmless they looked at the time. Who knew they turned out to be white terrorists? But anyway, it is always intellectual, always funny. And again, you can comment on this one because it's an interactive show as well. And another podcast I can't wait for him to bring back is called the Rhythmist Music Podcast. You can reminisce over the rhythm. And yes, that is Vaughn in AR form just because, you know, he messes with the AR stuff. So I keep hoping he does mess with the AR stuff because he's pretty good with graphics. But again, what is this show? This show is a musical podcast. Now, if you've heard Vaughn and you heard myself and others, we all love music. Who doesn't love music? So Vaughn has decided to create this podcast in which him and others, and like myself, will get together and listen to music and just grade on tier rating system. Sometimes it's music that Vaughn finds. Sometimes it's music that he asks us to bring up. But we always grade it. And like I said, differences in music always lead to great conversations. As you can see, Vaughn right there, you know, looking like he's manicured. I look like I just walked out of a Weight Watchers meeting. Actually, I've slimmed down since then. But again, it's an interactive show just like mine. And finally, his pop-up show. And I always go back to this one just because it's my favorite one, in which he calls it Fonkin' Around. Now, what is Fonkin' Around? If you haven't realized, Vaughn is a beat maker who makes beats like this. Now, here's the thing that I always find funny. You know you make a fire beat when you got popcorn. Yes, Vaughn, I'm going to bring this up. Because every time he makes a fire beat, he's always got popcorn. And that's, you know, that's got to be a cold beat when you got to have popcorn to it. But anyway, aside from that, Fonkin' Around, like I said before, Vaughn is a beat maker who will probably be dipping his toes back into the pond very soon. Aside from that, he likes to be able to show the creation process of how he got to where the beat is actually stagnant. And again, he just wants to show the entire process in very short form. So all this podcast can be found, like I said, under his videos, under his Facebook page at BigVZA. To where you'll be able to like, share, and subscribe from there. And as Vaughn is sitting there saying, I will return soon, I am just upgrading, and man, you are a Titan. Yeah, I am. Well, Titan fan. I ain't that big. And of course, check out his daily profile on Facebook for music picks. So that's my buddy Vaughn. Now, as for myself, I do have my own things to promote. I will sit there and say, for if you want custom shirts and things of that nature, please look up Little Creations by Kelly on Facebook. Yes, that is a shameless plug because my girlfriend does do shirts. She does do cups. She does do promotional things. So look her up on Facebook, Little Creations by Kelly, to where you can, you know, like I said before, she's actually done stuff for me in the past and I have none of it on. She actually did a shirt for me a while back that I thought was pretty cool, and I didn't stand up because I'm fat. Well, fat-ish. I'm slimming down. I'm slimming down. But she did a great shirt for me that I wish I wore because that would have been great promotion right now. But again, Little Creations by Kelly, you can find her out. My other buddy who actually does fitness. If you are into fitness, because my buddy Thomas, we're still trying to get him to get into fitness, because if you've seen Thomas Reed, trust me, the dude out there is in shape. But another buddy of mine who's in shape, Marday Weaver on Facebook has a program called Soul Your Fit. He has been working with me, getting my tail down. And again, I recommend him, especially if you're in the Nashville, Tennessee area, or if you want to, or he can actually train remotely and online. Definitely look him up on Facebook because, again, he's a good brother that actually has reasonable prices and at the same time can help you to reach your fitness goals. Because trust me, the guys like Thomas, in my opinion, they are both madmen when it comes to working out. So, aside from that, guys, like I said, I have my own stuff going on as far as my podcast goes. The link that you see at the bottom, if you copy and paste it in your YouTube browser, will take you to the How the Frack We Got Here YouTube page, to where you'll be able to see every podcast that I've done. And of course, you can like, share, and subscribe from there. Of course, my podcast schedule, it has changed. We are doing something a little bit different. So every Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m. is the Burned Out Podcast, in which I tell stories from an IT background that are meant to be funny because they are real-life experiences. If you worked in customer service, if you worked in retail, if you just work with the public in general, then you're definitely going to get where I come from when I tell these stories. And if you find them funny, then mission accomplished. If you don't find it funny, then I'm probably talking about you. You need to lighten up. Of course, what I started doing with How the Frack We Got Here, like I said, is usually every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon. I had decided, because I've heard from multiple people that, Saturday is usually a busy time and they never can catch it live, and sometimes it's a little hard to catch you on Facebook. I have decided that How the Frack We Got Here will now be 2-ply, which means that now starting on Wednesdays between 8 to 10 p.m., we will have a How the Frack We Got Here in the middle of the week. And of course, on Saturday, we will have a recap of the entire week, still in the 10 a.m. to noon time slot. So, going forward, especially starting this Wednesday, we will have a How the Frack We Got Here starting Wednesdays between 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. And of course, we'll have the recap weekend show of How the Frack We Got Here every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon. Now, later on on Saturday, today, between 8 to 10 p.m. will be the Off Limits Podcast. It is the podcast that is certainly going there. It's without limits, and unfortunately, I could not get the Zoom custom stuff that I have. I wasn't able to get it working yet, so until then, I'm still waiting to have my fans. I'm waiting to have my viewer show, which means that if you're watching this and you want to be a part of it, just reach out to me through the Off Limits Podcast on YouTube and let me know that you want to be a part of it, because I am starting to do a list of 3 people that I'm going to bring on using Zoom, because like I said, we're still following COVID protocols. So we're going to bring those 3 people on with me, and we're all going to have a subject that we're going to discuss a subject that I'll be bringing up at that time. But tonight will be no different, as we'll come up with another subject to talk about. And like I said, just like you guys are interacting here on How the Frack We Got Here, you can definitely interact here on Off Limits Podcast, because my plan is, like I said, on Off Limits Podcast, it is definitely an adult show, because we will be talking about anything and everything, and I do mean anything and everything, and I hope to see you guys there. And also on Sunday, between 7 to 9 p.m. is my Get Bit show. Now, what is Get Bit? That is my blurred podcast in which we cover everything of pop culture, from sci-fi to video games to superhero television, and just new stuff. We will talk about Mortal Kombat, because there will be a trailer for the new Mortal Kombat coming out that's actually due out in April 16th of this year. Can't wait for that. We will be talking about the first couple of episodes of WandaVision. WandaVision just released just yesterday. Episodes 1 and 2 are out, and I'll have a review about that as well. And also, I will talk about my Second Chance Gaming, because I did almost finished with Mass Effect Andromeda, and I will be, and like I said, my Second Chance Gaming is really games that got a bad rep from the beginning, but went back and played them again to give a true review. And I will be giving my review of Mass Effect Andromeda then, and hopefully Cyberpunk 2077 to see how the update works for the new games. And also, we will be talking about other movies that are coming out, and of course, the Marvel rollout, along with DC, because we are getting close to Zack Snyder's cut of the Justice League being released. All that information we will talk about on Get Bit tomorrow between 7 and 9 p.m. Hope to see you guys there. All of my shows have YouTube and Facebook pages, so if you ever want to see any podcasts that I have, whether on YouTube or Facebook, you can look them up by their names on either page. You can look them up by typing in The Burned Out Podcast, How the Frack We Got Here, The Off Limits Podcast, and Get Bit, that's GITBIT, to see every podcast that I've done thus far. Now, aside from that, guys, as I'm heading out, and I thank everybody for watching. I certainly appreciate that. COVID-19 is real. We are still well over 400,000 deaths in the U.S. 400,000 deaths abroad, over 380,000 deaths in the U.S. ICU capacity is still in the very dangerous range of being completely full. As you heard from California, they are actually turning away people who actually have zero survival. At the same time, the refrigerants containers containing dead bodies seem to climb. So, I cannot stress this enough. Wear a mask. Wear a mask. Please be safe. Please avoid large crowds. please only go out unless you absolutely have to. And like I said before, let's just be mindful of others just because those things are still happening. I mean, it's just that simple, guys. I mean, if you want a mask or custom mask, hey, Little Creations by Kelly, she can make masks too. Especially masks that you want certain things on them. Because I have a couple of them. Well, I have one that I love dearly because she put Autobots on it. And I still have ideas for other ones. So when she actually has time, I definitely want to ask her about those. But again, wear a mask, be safe. At the same time, thank you, doctors, nurses' aid, doctors' aides, those that work in environmental services and hospitals. You guys are the real MVP because this COVID pandemic has pushed you guys to the limit, and your dedication to making sure patients are taken care of, as well as at great risk for, trying not to bring it to your families and other people, is highly admired. If I were you guys, I'll be looking at Biden on Wednesday and being like, student loans, Biden, we need them to go. They need to go away. If I was y'all, I'm just saying, they already talked about canceling student debt up to $10,000 to $50,000. I just think they need to cancel it all. My opinion. But aside from that, please be nice and be kind to essential workers. I'm talking about those that work in fast food, those that work in retail, those that work in customer service, those that work in warehouses like Amazon, truck stop drivers, those that work in logistics like UPS, United States Postal Service, FedEx, DHL, things of that nature. A lot of us were able to work from home, and that's great, but there's a lot of jobs that unfortunately did not allow that same luxury. So when you're out and about, just be kind and just be patient, because like I said, they never have the ability to turn around and really have the same thing that we can do. So of course, be kind. I know a lot of places, especially around my hometown, are not always the same. So like I said, be kind and just hopefully you can hopefully, like I said, we'll get through it. Aside from that, guys, like I said before, I do thank you all for watching. If you like what I did, please let me know. If you didn't like what I did, please let me know. And like I said, I used to say how the Frack We Got Here, because now I got to change my catchphrase up. I used to say the whole point of how the Frack We Got Here is to be informed. We are not out here to change your opinion. We're not out here to persuade you. We're trying to do like the news stations did of old. It's pretty much just saying we are just here to inform you and allow you to make up your own mind. That's how the way it should be. We're not out here with an agenda. We're just out here to promote the news as it should. Because an informed community can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed one. Because an uninformed one got us Trump. An informed one will hopefully get us out of this mess. So, that being said, guys, please be careful this weekend. Thank you all for watching. I've been William Buchanan with How the Frack We Got Here. Hope to see you guys later on the Off Limits podcast. Until then, be safe.